I see Ms. Schopkes is ready to begin in the front, and also Professor Weisskirchen. So let's start ladies first.
So, Mr. President, I was in Tirana 2 weeks ago, and I was struck when I saw what was the development of the country. So, my question, your image outside is not what is corresponding to reality. And I hope, beside of education and all what you have proposed, your image should be improved. When President Juncker came to the University of Luxembourg, I'm from Luxembourg, he advocated very strongly 2 months ago that we have to take in charge relations with the Balkans, unless this move of the European Union, as you pleading for it, would not have would not last for peaceful development. What struck me in Albania is that there seems to be a nationalist movement based on the language, or the evolution of Albania. The history is unique history based on the construction of language. And how are you dealing with multilingualism in your country? What is the relation with Kosovo and with the Albanians in Kosovo that is rather conflictual as well? And how will you deal with the history of the war towards the education of young people?
Big questions. What I wanted to do, Mr. President, is actually to take 2 or 3 together. Okay. Is that okay? Because that was actually a number of questions in one. But let's try, just because I want as many voices as possible to be heard. Professor Weisskirchen, I think you were next. And then
yeah, I would like to ask you, dealing at first with the experience we have had here in Germany, that we, all of us, make failures. All nations, all personalities. And one of the most terrible failure that Germany has ever done is Auschwitz. That means that all of us, we have to face and come to terms with our history. What we have done in not only good things, but in bad things too. So this could be a starting point to educate the youth, if possible, to avoid these failures, to bring about new ones. That means better future. What is your country, what are the institutions doing, education, university, and all of that, and the politicians, to create that kind of awareness that after the fall of Yugoslavia came to the forefront hatred and violence. What are you doing in order to tackle that this could come back again?
Okay, and then a third question, and I think we'll come back to you, so it's not too many. Sheikh Ramzi.
Yes, Mr. President, that was an excellent speech. I really enjoyed what you're saying. However, I would like to, in the middle of your speech, you said you talk about Europe and of course how to integrate and how to stay together. Now we are. What is your opinion on Brexit? We are going out. What is your opinion on Brexit? And of course, if we go out, many countries will follow.
Please.
Thank you very much for your questions. And first, yeah, it's very real that abroad the image of, about Albania is not the same with reality which exists in Albania. It happens for several reasons. First, because Albania suffered the self-isolation for almost 50 years, 5 decades. But not just as a number of years, but as a quality of time. Because after the Second World War, the Europe had excellent opportunity to develop itself, to enrich the culture, civilization, democracy. So this period of time in Europe was the excellent time, and we lose it. We lose not as a number of years, but we lose as opportunity. Nobody knows about Albania at the time. When the people in Germany, France, UK, Netherlands, and others talk about the Balkans, they just mentioned former Yugoslavia. Nobody mentioned Albania, but Albania was the only one country which is not part of Yugoslavia.
No. Exactly.
Because it's completely unique. Nation, language, and so on. After the 90s, when the communism collapsed even in Albania, of course that Albanian people and Albanian country faced with Europe and the others in a very difficult situation, with the image of the young people who escape from a very poor country. You know, just example to understand a little bit the reality of this time. The salary, the monthly salary of the president of this time, the first president elected by democratic way in this time, early of 19, was $25 per month. If I just gave my son $25 this day, I'd be offended. Nowadays, it's completely different, you know. So the image that European countries, European citizens saw in TVs from this country, which opened finally, was just the young people escaping. And what happened? Lots of Albanian immigrants went to Italy and Greece mostly, to our neighbor countries. But even in Germany and other countries, Luxembourg and Belgium and so on, but mostly in Italy and in Greece. You know what happened? In 2008, I used to be Minister of Interior at the time in Albania. I had lots of records, information that Albanian immigrants from Italy and Greece started to come back together with Greek and Italian partners and opening small and medium businesses in Albania. And lots of them have been integrated. And the citizens in Italy, in Greece, in Germany, in Luxembourg, opened the doors, opened the hearts and received them, gave them a chance. And they justify the chance. Through the respecting the societies there, respecting the countries and the people there, and profiting education, culture, and development there, and bringing this back to Albania. So, the image is our responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the citizens of European Union member countries. And we have to provide this responsibility through the intercultural communication in Albania and abroad, in Luxembourg, in Berlin, in Paris, and the others. People in Europe, for example, have to know that Mother Teresa is Albanian by origin.
Good woman. Very good.
And of course, we have offered lots of noble people to international environment and fora. So, Albania is a country like the others. It's a people like the others, has a culture respected like the others, and might be contributor like the others. And the people when come to Albania, it happens like you, but to everybody who come to Albania, and their first reaction is, what? Well, we thought quite different things. And now I'm so happy when I heard, Mark, that ICD will come to Albania. And for sure, I can say for now that you will enjoy the beauty of mountains and the calm seaside in the south. So I do believe that the time has to be used properly in all kinds of sense, even for improving the image, but through the communication and through presenting ourselves as we are and discussing with the others in the same language of understanding. That's extremely important. About the situation in Kosovo. Yeah, history is the history, but we have not to be hostage of the history. We have not to forget history. We have to respect ourselves. Especially, we have to remember and recall our history in terms that the bad things cannot repeat anymore. But we cannot be hostage of history. Kosovo is a reality now. Of course, 95% of population are Albanian origin. But they have their own state. They have their own institutions. We recognize, we respect them as a neighbor country. And we fully support the dialogue and the good understanding and reconciliation process between Kosovo and Serbia. Because it's important for both countries. And not only. But the reconciliation of Kosovo and Serbia is important for entire the region. As an example which might be function and preserve as a legacy, as a good legacy. Of course, in one side, we have not to forget what happened in terms that not having anymore the wars, the hatred, the ethnic cleansing, the genocide, the barbarian acts. Doesn't matter who act in such way. Doesn't matter which kind of nationality belongs to who exercise such acts. The individuals has to take individual responsibility. Nation, people, and the countries have to work together. Because generations change, the countries remain. So, I do believe that both Kosovo and Serbia will overcome difficulties that they are facing nowadays. Sometimes politics intervene, of course. Sometimes the third actors try to demolish the process. But I do believe that this process will succeed because the civilization and the future is fully understanding by both countries and people in Serbia and in Kosovo. Albania always will respect and will support this, and at the same time, of course, we will have good relations with Kosovo as a neighbor country, and we will improve our relations with Serbia. We have no other choices. So, dealing with the situation in avoiding the hatred that you mentioned. Yes, in any country there are bad experiences in the past, but Germany is not a Nazis, you know. Such Albania is not a communism. But we have not to forget the past in terms that to be prepared any time for reaction that the past, the bad past, not to repeat anymore. That is important to me. Nowadays, we highly commend and back and support the role of Germany as a big democracy in the Europe, as a strong economy in terms for promoting the values of the free economy, the democracy, and the values. And we do believe that Germany and other countries, France and other countries in Europe, will find the leadership in very difficult situation in Europe, which the leadership is required very strongly to overcome all challenges and phases. And the Europe has demonstrated in its long and rich history that always has defined and has provided the leadership to overcome any kind of difficulties and challenges that the time, as a strong actor, has faced in front of us as human beings. Dealing with your question about the Brexit, it's a democratic will of British citizen. Not to everybody, but a slight majority, but majority. When I met right after the decision of referendum, the British ambassador in Tirana in my office, I told that you are leaving European Union, but you are not leaving Europe. Yes. You are still here. Yes. I do believe that the United Kingdom or Great Britain remain absolutely important partner for European Union, mostly in security issue, but even in the economy. I cannot say anything in details how the relations between European Union and Britain can be developed in the future because Albania is not part of European Union, but especially in the security field, they need each other. European Union and Britain represent a great legacy in civilization, are the models of civilization and the culture in terms of the freedom and the rights. They will remain as a leader of entire process of enriching civilization and human rights, democracy in the global scale. Albania, of course, is focused on the European integration process. On 2008, we became the member of NATO, and we have offered extreme contribution in the NATO framework with combat forces in Afghanistan. But the central project for us is the European integration process. Of course, we are cautious. I'm cautious because there are lots of discussions among the politicians about the European integration process scheduled. But I'm cautious that it's going to happen, but we have to go through a process. And when I say we, I mean Albania as a society, but even the other Western Balkan countries are not right when blame European Union member states for, demonstrating a fatigue. Because we have to prepare ourselves. If we will be, and we can be needed for European Union, the welcome decision will be absolutely a real one. Because we need each other, we are the same. Especially in the security field, I think that we can be a real contributor, and we have to convince, in terms of image, the European citizens, not only the politicians, but European citizens, that the countries of Western Balkan region can be a contributor, not just a consumer.
Very important.
Of course, in a kind of estimation of numbers, people say that the number of population of all Western Balkan countries are less than population of Romania. But it doesn't mean we have to offer possibility for contributing in this framework, in this family. So we have to, what is extremely important to me is to keep the process alive. That's the most important, because through the process, our societies will profit more. So there are lots of good signs, and pray to God for enriching the mind and the soul of the people.
Allow me to underline 2 points that were just made, and then we have time for maybe 2 more brief questions and comments. First of all, I thought the question of Ms. Shripka's was very good, and I think exactly the job of culture diplomacy is doing that. In the sense, if you have a situation where a country is presented one way in the world, perceived another way in the world, and the reality is something different, that's our job, in the sense to really try to complete the picture. Albania is this, but it's also this and this. And to the very good point that Professor Weisskirchen made, Germany I really think we can see as a success story when it comes to nation branding. At the end of the Second World War, who would think Germany would have a positive international brand? And as you pointed out, first of all, they dealt with their history in a serious way. You can't go anywhere in Berlin without seeing Jewish memorial here, there, etc. All of us, I'm sure, around the world, the first thing we learned about German history was the Second World War. And I think that was a really important process. And as in any case, when you're trying to build trust between 2 individuals, 2 countries, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, these are my successes, these are my failures, and I think that was a big help for Germany. Then you had consistency since the Second World War. The foreign policy of Germany was very consistent with the cultural policy. And the third element, coming to Ms. Shripka's point, a big investment in cultural diplomacy. Germany, in terms of Goethe Institute, German Academic Exchange Service, Deutsche Welle, endless. They spend more, it's at least for the last 10 or 15 years, the Germans spend more on cultural diplomacy than economic or political diplomacy. And since it's consistent with the foreign policy, it works. So I think just 2 very important points where I think there's a huge potential for really taking the great assets and actually historical experiences that Albania has had to move ahead. So I just wanted to underline those 2 very important points. Let's try to take 2 more brief questions because we're a little bit over time, but it's a special opportunity with the president, so I want to make the most of it.
Absolutely.
Maybe first in the front and then in the back, please.
President Nishani, it's very nice to see you again here, and after 3 years. I'm from Turkey, TV channel A9. You said something very beautiful about Albania, that Muslims, Christians, and Jews live in peace, and you hosted Jews in the past, you said. But we know today, unfortunately, very few Christians and Jews left in the Middle East, in the Muslim countries. They had to leave their countries because of the oppression and persecution. This is terrible and against Islam. You know that because at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, and they actually asked for protection. The Christians, they were oppressed by the unbelievers, and they were protected by the Christians that time. And he had a Christian wife, and in Medina Constitution, Christians, Jews, and Muslims had equal rights. This is very Islamic in your country. So how did you accomplish that? If there are Muslims like this in Albania and overall in the Islamic world, it's a general problem, hatred against Jews, anti-Semitism, and hatred against the Christians. What is the difference between among the Muslims, which is very Islamic, again, I have to emphasize, Muslims in the Albania and in the Islamic world? How did you accomplish that?
Okay, and maybe one more question. This is the former Deputy Foreign Minister of Romania, please. Professor Dobra.
Mr. President, thank you very much for the very interesting presentation about what happens in Albania, what Albania thinks and sees things, and also about the developments in the region. And I'll just remember one thing. The Yugoslav crisis, the post-Yugoslav crisis, had 2 important phases. One was related to Bosnia, the other one was related to Kosovo. And we know that the common feature was the ethnic cleansing, which hit very much the internal structure of those societies. Now, because we speak about cultural diplomacy, we refer mainly about those conflicts, about the issue on how to use cultural diplomacy tools for the post-conflict rehabilitation. And for instance, about Bosnia, I remember that there was an initiative to launch, and it was initiated inside the society, not from the political circles, to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, like the one that was used in South Africa. Because Truth and Reconciliation means to reorganize and to redraw the social tissue inside the society, which is practically very useful for ensuring lasting peace inside that society, and also to create the grounds for development. But that initiative was rejected by political circles. Now the question is, because you mentioned also the meetings that you had with different heads of state in the region, which is very good for ensuring regional cooperation. What is the status in Bosnia from your point of view in reorganizing the internal social tissue for offering that society a chance, and we know what is currently the position inside its cooperation with the European Union. And the second point is about the relationship between the Albanian majority and the Serbian minority in Kosovo. Is there a possibility to ensure that kind of cooperation for a better future for both? Because, frankly speaking, Serbia and Kosovo have a common future in Europe, and they are practically with a prospect to join the UN together. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. First, thank you for your question, but very frankly speaking, I do not see myself in capacity to judge the level of the behavior of religion to individuals, because the religion is very individual to everybody, and it's something which belongs to the soul and the spirit of everybody. I really, in this point of view, I don't see any division among the Muslim people, because if they trust and believe in holy book of Quran, they are the same. In Albania, what I mentioned and what I would like to reiterate is that in terms of faith and religion, people who belong to the Muslim community always have preserved the value of respect, principle of respect, mutual one, to respect the others and to be respected by the others, being open by the reality. In Albania, it's very familiar to get a family when the husband is a Muslim and the wife is a Catholic, or vice versa.
It's allowed in the Quran, actually, this way.
Yeah, but in Albania is in practice, is exercise, is a real one, and it has been function, because the belief and the faith is something which belong to individuals. It should be and have to be a free choice. And of course, what I mentioned in my speech, we have been very care for protecting the respect, for enriching the respect, and in the same time, the state not to intervene in the religion cases, in the religion belief. So, but I think that it's important, the education, to avoid the hatred. Because there is no bad Islam or the good Islam, the bad Catholicism or good Catholicism. It's only the good behavior or bad behavior of the individuals, of the people. And we have to encourage the good model of the behavior of the people. And we have to discourage and to fight the dangerous and the bad behavior of the bad people. Because nowadays, for example, the terrorists are not just hurting only the non-Muslim country, but even the Muslim societies. And they have no other names besides the terrorists, but not dealing with their religion, not dealing with the faith, but with their strictly criminal activities. They are destroying their own countries, they are destroying the cultural heritage, the civilization they are threatening our life of innocent people everywhere, our civilization, our future, and we have to fight them properly. So that's my idea, but just again, excusing me because I cannot intervene and to judge the religion of the people.
No, but you said something very true. It's a Quranic truth that they follow Islam, actually. What they do is a very good behavior. It's a good example for entire Muslim community that this is what normal is, actually, Albania.
Yes.
Peace in Albania.
Yeah.
Final question or comments?
Sorry, for the Bosnia. Sorry. I had an excellent visit in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I enjoyed the excellent receiving there. I had excellent discussions but I had 3 counterparts in front of me. The problem is that the structure of the state in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which they have 3 presidents, 3 parliaments, 3 governments. Okay, it might be a model, but in that kind of model, responsibility and accountability of individuals, it's triple. If they will find the equilibrium between the model which represent Bosnia and Herzegovina and responsibility, that will be fine and will be functioning. But yeah, there are lots of concerns about the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I cannot blame one side or another side. What I know is that Bosnia and Herzegovina it's absolutely not just part of this region and contributor of this region, but it will be absolutely also added value even for European family, like the other countries, like Albania, like Serbia, like Macedonia and Montenegro and Kosovo in the coming times. But the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina absolutely will remain a shame in the history of the region and history of the war. Maybe the intervention, because thanks God, finally even the international community intervened in Bosnia, but of course, very, very delayed. Maybe in case of Kosovo, they intervened earlier because of such bad and terrible experiences in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Because we saw and we have now noted such terrible experiences in Bosnia. On that, even because of some responsibilities of international community. And maybe in that case we have seen making real the thought that lesson be learned. So important is that responsibility belongs to human being, not to the formula or to the structures which are designed by the people, are managed by the people, are monitored by the people, and can be changed by the people. So I'm a partisan of the philosophy that everything starts and ends to the people, to human being. We make our life alive and our world to function properly or not properly. So because of that, the majority of the people belong to the responsible people in the world. But their voice in terms of influence must be higher in my judgment. That is even the case which might be considered in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Excellent. All right. Well, on that note, I think we should come to a conclusion. It was an excellent lecture, I think, that inspired and provoked some very interesting thought processes on all of us. And as you were just saying in your concluding remarks, it's up to the responsibility is ours, to the human beings. And I think it's very important that we don't forget that. Also, with the case of cultural diplomacy, traditionally, cultural diplomacy was governments. It was soft power. It was winning the hearts and minds of foreign audiences. Today, it's not only governments. I think governments, yes, need to stay active, but civil society and private sector are just as important. So it's really, I think, an equally shared responsibility. And in that sense, we should keep that in mind as we develop strategies for Albania, how we can work with the private sector, also with civil society, to really build then sustainable bridges. But we really appreciated, again, you coming. We look forward to the private meetings later today, also the advisory board meeting later today, to try to go the next step in terms of some of the theses and strategies that you suggested. And we very much appreciated it. So I'd like to, before we take a group photo with the President, let's first a big round of applause expressing our sincere gratitude. President Nishani.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And